to then go back to what Isaiah said. We need to make that determination of what dollar amount we're gonna give to do the whole project. Because what's gonna happen, like always, we're gonna take the cheapest way out, which will be the 8 whatever. We're gonna form an authority. They're gonna come back and tell us that that dollar amount is not good enough, and that it's not working, and we're failing again. And again, we're in the public eye not doing the right thing.
And we did go back to the vendor and said, if the budget was $825, what could you do? And their response to us was, I can operate it on 45 hours and still provide minimal programming and marketing. So they came back with reduction of hours is how they felt that they could operate within the budget. So they gave us proposals of 45 hours and 56 hours and the 89 hours for us to review.
And the committee was saying 44 hours is not enough, correct?
The committee made a recommendation based on the results of the RFP, and the RFP provided for 89 hours of operation. So based on the current hours of operation, this was the recommendation.
And they said 45 hours, we brought it to you, council.
All right, so in saying that, if we have 825 now, we would need roughly 300,000, 400,000 to get a decent.
And continue to
Proposal
operate at the
and
current
operation of it.
operations of 89 hours.
All right, thank you.
So,
We still have Councilor.
Oh, do you?
Go ahead. Did you have something?
no, I was just going to say, I was going to bring forward the recommendation, and if you don't like those, then we need to go back through this list, and then you tell us what you want to address.
We've got Councilor Davis, and then we have Councilor Henderson, then we can move on.
Bring his recommendation.
Mr. City Manager, you were ahead of the selection process?
No,
Who was ahead of the selection process?
Andrea McCorvey.
How many members were on the selective team?
Let me just say that, so before she responds, I don't get involved.
That's okay, I'm just asking a
I
question.
just want you to know, so it's known that I don't get involved
You
in
don't have to
selection of
defend
vendors.
yourself.
Let's not interrupt each other.
I'm just asking a question.
He said no.
Andrea McCorvey, how many members were on the committee?
I had that information at the last presentation, so I'm just trying to pull that presentation out to provide that.
And while she's doing that, Mayor, I do want to finish what I was going to say. I don't get involved in the selection of vendors. You know, the team handles that, and then it comes to me to go on my agenda so that everyone knows.
Put the slide from the last presentation about the Aquatic Center RFP process up on here, so it might jog council's memory. That was at their last meeting. We had a presentation on the RFP process and how many committee members there were and who they represented and that kind of thing.
There were 3 voting members, 2 Parks and Rec Department, and 1 member who was the previous member of the CAC Advisory Committee and the past president of the Hurricane Swim Team. Those were the 3 voting members. We also had non-voting members, 1 additional from Parks and Rec, 1 from Internal Audit, 1 from the Finance Department, and 1 from the Parks and Rec Advisory Board. So that was the evaluation committee.
Okay, and I'm finished with that. I'm not really going to question that. If anything, I would have, I mean, it's obvious. You know, I would question why didn't you have 5 voting members? But
We typically in RFP process have either 3 or 5 voting members, and the committee determines that, and the initiating department. So this particular RFP had 3 voting members.
I understand, but if you want the balance and the I think having 5, if you're going to have 2 members from Parks and Recs, you should have had 5 voting members. But anyway, I do want to say this, Mr. City Manager, and again, I know it seems like people are taking defensive positions today, very defensive. I will say from a council standpoint, again, that we've been asked to make an executive decision on this matter from day one with limited information. I personally had to dig up a lot of information and request information myself. Today, we've got a little more detail on some of these options that we didn't have last week and that we didn't have prior to that week. And prior to that week, we were asked something different. I think the reason that we're here today is because we're trying to get the information to make a qualified decision. And, you know, one of the things that I struggle with, and before I get to that, Councilor Baker made a very good observation, which is another question we don't have the answer to today. But, you know, I think back now, hindsight's 20/20, but, you know, maybe the RFP should have been for the whole aquatics program for third-party management. And even from an authority standpoint, the whole aquatics program, I'm talking about all the pools, we don't know if there's cost savings there yet. We don't understand that. And there could be. I would think that there would be cost savings in that, from that standpoint. But I don't know. All I have to work with is one option. And we know today there's only one option. You only have one finalist. You did have two finalists, but you only have one. And I think now that vendor has pulled out, that it's okay to have this public dialogue. I read the commentary in the paper today, and I just want to state for the record, one of the issues that I've struggled with is that this council has known for a while that there was a vendor, a very qualified vendor, by the very standards that you wrote the RFP by, that said they can operate the pool for 89 hours within your budget and provide other aspects in running the program as well. They are no longer a vendor, so all we have today are no longer finalists, so all we have is one. And that's known. And I don't know the reason and why they didn't get selected. I've heard. I've talked to various people that have given me, you know me, I'm going to do my homework. I've talked to various people that have given me not only references, but other information on it. So I want that to be public. Is something comical, Mr. City Manager?
No.
Is something comical?
No.
About what I'm saying?
No.
Or is it, Mayor, something comical?
No, you just finish up and we'll explain about the other vendor. Go ahead.
Well,
Because I don't know nothing about it.
well, I think everybody was copied the information, and the city reprimanded the vendor for going outside the procurement process. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I just said, I don't want to.
I don't know about that info.
Well, I'll email it to you today if you want it. I don't want to question the selection process, okay? I don't even want to go there, all right? But when I look at these proposals, okay, and I'm not saying that's the best proposal, and I'm not saying that's the right group, but when I look at their proposal, when I look at vendor A, when I look at Parks and Recs, when I look at some of the other budgets that are out and other pools that are out there, and I start looking at mainly the labor model, I still feel like, personally, this council still feels like there's room for savings. And I still believe that on the labor model side, it's heavy. I question the number of people that need to be employed. So that does have a effect on this $500,000 number that we're talking about. So I'm still working through that. Yes, I can make the decision that you're asking us to make today. I could do that. But am I doing the city, am I doing it what I signed an oath to do, to try to find the best possible solution here? It's taken some time, but that's what I think this council's tried to do, is find the best possible solution. I think we're narrowing it down, and we're talking about a lot of stuff, pertinent information that we haven't talked about in a long time. So I just want you to know that there are other possible solutions out there that we can add to the equation. I don't think this is the set in concrete route. So, you know, I'm not okay with this. I'm kind of disappointed in how the forcefulness of the city pushing us in one direction, because I don't think that's the only direction. I don't think it's the only direction about the 17 items that we've talked about, that the whole community's in an uproar now. You put out one fire, you build another fire. So I don't know what you mean, Mr. City Manager, when you say pick vendor A management company, and then let me figure it out. I don't know what that means.
Okay.
But I'm going to be responsible to answer to all these folks. But when I try to balance all this information, it's very appropriate for us to have these questions, and it takes some time to work through. So I take offense when somebody tells me that we've been given everything and, that you should have made this decision a long time ago. That's not true. That's inaccurate. Totally inaccurate. So I just want the public, for the sake, to understand some of the things that we're wrestling with, that this is not just the council, as I perceive today, just sitting back, not taking action, being lazy on the matter. That's not true. That is totally not true. And I would hope that through this whole process, it didn't happen, but there was plenty of time for us to sit down in a room and work these things out. But we've been doing it right here. I hope we learn from this, and I hope in the future that we can solve some of these things by maybe not even getting to this point. So I apologize to the citizens that this has been played out in the paper. I apologize to the citizens that it's somewhat been played out at this council chambers, because it shouldn't have happened this way. And I apologize. But I want you to know that I believe all these councilors are giving their best effort with what we've been given to try to make a good decision and meet the needs of the community wholeheartedly. And I don't fault anybody. And I think the conversation, even though it's been somewhat, challenging to each other, I think it's good. I hope we learn something from it.
All right. A couple of things. This other vendor that has been referred to had some issues related to what they submitted and did not meet the RFP. This vendor has, contrary to the law, been contacting elected officials to plead their case. That violates our procurement process, and it appears now they've been provided some information. So that we don't discuss it here, because we don't need to figure it out, I'm going to ask the city attorney to refer the matter to the state attorney general just to look into, because I think that vendors need to follow the legal process. They cannot lobby elected officials. That violates the procurement process. They cannot come in and say, after they've gone through a valid procurement process, to say, I'm better than the other guy. That's not the way it works. And so I think that needs to be looked into. And frankly, I know nothing about this other vendor other than the emails he keeps sending me, because he's sending them to all of you and copying me on them, other than he doesn't know the law very well. And I question his judgment. So I don't know how he fell short in the committee, but my goodness, he's fallen short as to state and local law. So at least in my opinion, but that's not for me to say. I think it's for the state attorney general to look into. So let's get that referred up so we can get some issues.
Let me say one thing, Mayor. I'd be glad to send a letter to them, but I don't know on a local ordinance issue like that they'll respond. It's clear that in our specifications, all our rules, vendors should not contact counselors or people with the ultimate vote, but we'll be glad to send a letter.
Okay, I think just so he says, I'm not interested, that's fine with me. But I'm gravely concerned, and I think it also needs to look at some state procurement laws. But in any event, that the Attorney General is the expert at that. This other business about executive decisions versus legislative decisions. To steal a phrase from George Bush, I'm the decider. I can decide all kinds of things. The city manager has no problem making decisions. We make all kinds of decisions, but pursuant to the charter, the legislative branch has to make decisions about appropriations. And one of the issues that we're bumping up against, unfortunately, is we don't have any reserve monies left through which we can cover some of the blips that occur and get through the budgetary year, and then just, apprise council as we're doing it that we're covering a few matters and we'll all reach the end with $120 12 days, 110 days in reserve. And so necessarily, when we have to find money, we have to take it away from somebody else. That's where we are at this point. There's not a pot of reserve money. There is, but we are, as you all know and has been reported in the paper, we're below the 60-day reserve. So we have to take it away by cutting something else. That's where we are, and that's where you get into a legislative decision. So the process, the executive branch worked through the procurement process, through Andrea McCorvey, who went through the process and made this recommendation, but also contracting. I sign contracts, but only with approval of the legislative body, the council. So when the contract was going to come forward, not for what we were wanting, that became a council issue. And then it was further exacerbated by the fact we didn't have the money, which is an appropriation issue, which is a council issue. So if we can get the money straight, and if we can get the contract issue straight, we can move forward. We were asked by council to pull that money from Parks and Rec, not to go further into the reserve, because obviously that has issues, not to take it from other places, but to take it either from programming in Parks and Rec or from monies Parks and Rec is otherwise qualified for, which would be the tax money that most the people here today are here about and concerned about. And so that's why this lays at council. Absolutely, Dr. Worsley, the city manager, and I could go through and make these tweaks and so forth, but we've already heard, and I think we still, just by tweaking, may come up hundreds of thousands of dollars short unless we redistribute the tax money, which is a council decision, or take money from somewhere else, which is a council decision. So that's the reason why this lays at council, is because it is integrally intertwined with an appropriation revenue, an expense decision by council, and a contract decision by council. If it was just an executive decision as to programming and those kind of decisions are made all the time. When we adjust hours all the time, we don't come to council. We do that kind of thing all the time. So that's why it's ended up at council, just to clarify. As for if we had some meetings, we could have all decided that. Because we're talking about contract issues, because we're talking about budget issues, we are subject to the open records laws and the sunshine laws of the state of Georgia. We cannot have these meetings about these kinds of things, nor can I get on the phone and poll counselors when, by the way, as a matter of public record, I know counselors are holding diametrically opposed views on things. They say things like, I want 89 hours and no more. Another one will say, I'm fine with 72 hours. Another one says, well, I think we need to abide by the $850,000 budget we have, and it be 45 hours. That's three divergent views held steadfastly by council members here that I have heard in open session. To call counselors and talk about appropriation issues such as that, sure, we can do it conceptually, but we cannot poll and we cannot make decisions behind the scenes because of the Georgia open records laws. And so that's why, unfortunately, we have to come here. And I know it's a lot, and I know it's tough decisions, but that's what we all signed up for. So I hope that gives some context. And the reason why the city manager laughed a moment ago is because I turned his mic off. Yeah. And so I just didn't want to get into the back and forth about this. It's a sensitive issue. It's an important issue. And I think we all appreciate, hopefully, our roles. But when it comes to appropriation, it comes to contracting, that is squarely legislative. If you give us direction, we will move forward and make the executive decisions necessary. All right, we've got Mayor Pro Tem.
I just want to say, the reason we're here discussing this now is because there are almost 10 different decisions on what we should do and where the money should come from. But if we don't discuss it, to me, you can't make an educated final decision. And even the decision that will get made, somebody's not going to be happy, but one has to be made. And it's 10 people up here who has to make the decision where the money's gonna come from. And this is the primary reason why we don't get into RFPs and bids. Because vendors are not supposed to contact us when they submit bids. And every time one does contact somebody, then you get into stuff like this. They contact some people, and some of us don't hear anything about it. And if they sent me an email, if anybody sent me an email in the last month or so, and I have not responded, I had 7,000 emails that got deleted.
All right, we've got two more, and then we're going to get, Mr. City Manager, your recommendation. And if council feels they need other information, other options, then they have this very in-depth PowerPoint that has impacts as to every one of the 17 proposals. So in order to move along, we have Councilor Woodson.
Yes, I just want to clarify because it bothered me when Councilor Davis said that about, the vendor sending us emails and us knowing what's going on and being a part of it. I don't like playing politics. Even though I'm a political person, I consider myself more a grassroots person. When there's a process in place and we have it, I like to respect that process. I don't believe in micromanaging anything. And I don't want anybody to think that vendors are contacting me and I'm siding with them or I'm having discussions with them, because I will not reply to a vendor who's disgruntled on an RFP. If I get it, I forward it to staff and say, deal with this. Because I'm not familiar with everything that goes behind there. I don't want to be in a courtroom one day saying that I did something in the process. So I want to make that very, very clear. I don't do that. Even when someone comes to me with a program and tells me this is this program here, I don't tell them what to do. I say, contact our city manager's office, and they will direct you. If they tell me I can't get an appointment with him, then I'll call him and I'll say, or staff, hey, I have someone who's trying to meet with you to show you a presentation. For the simple reason is that I don't want it to become an influence and then something goes wrong. So to say having communications with all council members, no. And this is not the first time that this has happened. And vendors are choosy, anybody in this city, because I've known a lot of things that's happening in my district. Nobody's come to me. They'll go to the mayor first, they'll go to the city manager, they'll go to one of my colleagues, and when it has to come down to the bottom line, then they come talk to me. I always don't know what's going on until they really, really need my vote. So I just want to make that clear. I'm not in the game of who wins the RSP or who doesn't or what. All I want is what's best. And then what I understand today, we need at least $1 million to get that facility running to the level that it should be running. And Gary brought another good item up that we need to discuss. It's the lightning system on there, because I've gotten tons of phone calls and emails in reference to that. Why didn't you put the lighting system? We could have had many tournaments. And that's the first thing I talked to Gary when I walked in here. I said, hey, do you know about this? So please, 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 please. I'm not about to micromanage any FRPs or anything like that. I don't want to be in jail. I have a house and I don't want to lose my house. That's the only thing I have. My house and my family, I don't want to lose it. So if you're a vendor and you think you can manipulate me, I'm telling you I'm sorry, because I want to keep my house unless you're letting me come live with you after the lawsuit. And that's all I have to say, Mayor. I don't want anybody to think that I'm playing sides.
Okay. Councilor Davis.
I was just having a little sidebar with the city attorney. I just want to make it known again, like I said, the other finalist is pulled out. I think the email went to everybody, so we all know that. I believe any information that's out there is subject to an Open Records Request Act. And anybody can get the information. I don't see anything other than, I think the city already, on the first email that went out, reprimanded the this finalist and told them exactly what they needed to do. So, Madam Mayor, I don't know why you're requesting to refer something to the Attorney General, because I think everything is pretty much final at this point. They're not involved. They're not part of the process. I don't believe anybody's talked to these folks, but certainly everybody, including yourself, received the information. So it is, at that point, it's public record, and it's subject to an Open Request Act. So if anybody in this
No, it's
audience
not.
wanted that information, then the city attorney could comment on that. But
Sure.
Well, a vendor may have dropped out, but you still have an RFP pending with Company A or whoever it is. So until that RFP is awarded or rejected, then normally everything is kept confidential. But as soon as that happens, anything would be subject to a request.
Once it's approved.
Yeah,
But see, that's the
Once it's approved
problem.
or rejected.
There's been a Company A, and now this other vendor who didn't get the recommendation is lobbying decision makers in order to thwart the process, hopefully to become the vendor of choice and take Company A out. And so they're providing information to elected officials, saying, gee, choose me, I'm 10 times better than what you all are talking about. And that's where it's a huge impropriety. So the process is not closed, and they're actually actively attempting to assert influence, demonstrably.
Well, I disagree with you, because we all read the email. I don't think they were lobbying anybody. I think they just told us that there's another option out there, because it was a very confusing dialogue for many weeks here at the council, and I think it even frustrated the vendor. So they just wanted people to know there was another option out there. Nobody was lobbying. Ms. City Manager, if it is, now that we have one finalist that you're going to recommend, can we get all the qualifying information so we can take a look at, we don't even know who it is, we don't know the final determining factors or any of that.
Well,
It's just kind of and right now I understand there's two options on the table. There's your option or the city's recommendation, or I believe there's an option that's going to be put on the table dealing with an authority.
well, let me just speak to the bringing forward vendor A. I'm prepared to do that, and I'm prepared to do it as soon as next week. But again, and we'll provide you the information consistent with what we've done before. We'll provide you as much information as we can when we bring it forward for you to approve the RFP, because the RFP will then allow staff to negotiate certain things. We've got a fixed price, but then we are able to negotiate to get the things in that we know that you want and the citizens want. And so I don't know if we provide them all of the information at that time.
Well, and I would be okay with that if you've got some things.
And so we provide you what we can legally provide you when we bring forward.
And I'm assuming you're discussing the hours of operation and all, so that's all still negotiable.
That's part of the
and
negotiation. Like if we go back.
I guess we're going to talk about that too today.
Talk about.
The hours of operation. I think there's been some recommendations, 89.
Well, but it's hard to talk about.
72.
And that's why I said earlier, we're better able to bring you a complete operations plan, getting the task force involved and everybody when we know how much money we're dealing with. If we don't know how much money, we're talking to a vendor and we can't tell them, we don't know how much money we got and we can't figure out the hours. That's why we're trying to get to where we're trying to get to today. And then once we get to that dollar amount that we can agree on, then we'll get with the task force and we'll bring back a united front and having gotten citizen input and everything and say, here's what we propose as the hours. I mean, that's where we're trying to get. So when we leave here today, if you tell us, you know, the budget is 825, effective July 1st, that's what you ought to plan on, that's what you ought to talk to Company A about, we'll put them on the agenda next Tuesday, and we'll tell them go to work and produce your hours of operations and hire your lifeguards or do whatever you're going to do, and July 1st, we're going to hand you the keys. That's where we want to get to. We need a dollar amount.
Okay. All right. Let's see. So you're going to give us your recommendations, if you would, and we can just take this other voluminous report, which, James, thank you very much. We appreciate you and your staff. And
well, let me say, I'm going to bring forward my recommendation. And if none of those, or if that doesn't suit you, then we need to either go back through this and do some of the kinds of things we've heard about, instead of, like Councilor Davis mentioned, instead of the 450 savings, you know, make it something less, and instead of laying off 13 part-timers, we lay off 7 and we add 7 hours back and have 37 hours instead of 4. We can do all of that if you want to nibble at some things. But I'd like to present the 2 options or 3 options, and the final option is just that. We go back, if you don't accept options 1 and 2, we go back and we look through this and we come up with the final number. But when you put the option up, one of the options, you're going to have to go back and address the slide in here. So why don't you pass those out, and we'll let you go ahead. And are you got a slide for this that
Yes.
you're going to put on?
while that's being handed out, Councilor Woodson, Pam has a budget question.
Pam, I have a question for you, just out of curiosity.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No,
I thought you were finished. I'm
Well,
sorry.
I was going to just comment more on this option as they were handing it out. But
Let Councilor Woodson ask her budget question, and then by that time, everybody will have the recommendation. We'll turn the mic over to you, Mr. City Manager.
I'm sorry, that
Go
was
ahead.
the boss speaking. Pam, I just was curious, how many days are in the reserve?
At the end of the fiscal year, which is when we measure reserve days, it was 56.12. So we were slightly below the 60-day reserve as of June 30th.
And that 60-day is what we like to be at, correct?
60 days is the minimum of where we would prefer not to ever drop below. And as part of the fund balance policy that council adopted, that was the minimum. And there's provisions in that fund balance policy that council adopted that requires us to get back to the 60 days. So that proposal will come forward in the FY17 budget.
Okay. And my question for asking, if we're talking about $500,000, right?
Yes.
And not everybody jump up, it's just a thought. $500,000. If we were to take that from the reserve, how many days would that bring us? And if we only did that just for 2017 only, so we have time to see what the new A is going to do, and we can readjust everything we need to adjust in the budget section, how would that affect us?
It would be just over around 1 1/4 days of fund balance. 1 day is approximately 420,000. So 500 would be about 1 1/4, just under 1 1/4 days.
So then we'll be down to 55
just under
days?
55 days.
55 days. Okay, that's something I like to consider and think of, too.
Okay. All right, Mr. City Manager.
And I was just going to say, in this recommendation, she'll fully explain it, but, yeah, I tried to be sensitive to not impacting seniors or children in rec centers, the youth and all the athletic programs, things that have to do with crime prevention and putting youth on a steady course, but keeping seniors active. And so these were the couple of things that I felt and staff agreed with. It's got to come from somewhere, and someone's going to hurt. And so these are the areas we've identified. So would you, Deputy City Manager?
Sure. So the recommendations from the administration is twofold. The first being a reallocation of 1/3 of 1% of the hotel motel tax. That equates to $200,000, either from the River Center allocation or from CCVB's allocation. So that's recommendation one. The second recommendation, which is starting on page 9 of the presentation that Dr. Worsley presented, is to fully implement the transition of the after-school program to the school district or increase the fees for the program to break even. And so that, if we could go back to the other presentation, we just want to at least walk through that option. It begins on page 9, and this option is kind of twofold. Either at this point, we're operating the after-school program at a deficit of about $300,000. So either transitioning that over to the school district, they have assumed responsibility for 6 of the schools, and so this would continue that transition, or to increase the fees for this particular after-school program to break even. And if you could flip back to the other presentation, we just want to walk through that real quick, just so you understand the proposal. And Dr. Worsley will present this option, and then we'll go back to the recommendation. It starts on page 9 of that presentation.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager Pam Hodge. Just so you understand with this particular one, around 2011, the school system took over 6 after-school programs, and they're listed here for you to see. There are Allen, Britt David, Magnet, Hannon, River Road, Blanchard, and Winton Road. That leaves us currently with 21 elementary schools and 5 middle schools within our community schools program. Impacting also takes a look at staff. If we did not have this particular division anymore, we would impact 4 full-time employees as well as 134 part-time employees will be displaced in relations to this particular option. The second part of this option is on page 10 of your handout, and it takes a look at increasing after-school fees in order to meet the gap of $300,000. And what that will look like, we would have to increase fees by $6 per entry. So for every child that enrolls into the after-school program, the parent will pay $6 more, and I'll get to that in the next slide, but I did want to let you know what the $6 entry fee was. Looking at page 11, here I show you in the black, it shows what the rates are currently, and in the green is the $6 increase of what the rate would be. And so let's just look at an example. I'll give you 2 examples. The first example, let's look at the $60,000 and above salary for parents. Here you have the first child, they currently pay $56, and so a $6 increase would be $62. If that family also had a second child, they pay $51 currently, it would increase to $57, and then any additional child after that currently pays $48, and then the additional $54. I want to, excuse me, in contrast, show you all the way down to the bottom of the scale, less than $12,000. Those individuals pay $21 for the first child, increasing to $27, and so forth and so on with the $16, $22, and then each additional child $13 and $19. Yes, this would also have an impact, perhaps for those that pay currently less in terms of their weekly fees. And we are not looking for this to be a profit margin. We're just looking to increase the fees in order to break even. I think one Also, we want to show you on page 12, which takes a look at the comparison. So you can take a look here, looking at the provider side, so you can currently see what Parks and Recreation, what Parks and Recreation is currently offering, and then take a look at what others are offering down the provider column here in Columbus that offer some youth after-school programs. Starting at the top, what we currently is income-based. As you see in the second column, we're the only agency that we can find currently that is based as income-based, meaning there's a sliding scale in place. Our weekly rates range from $21 to $56 and drop in 10 to 20, whereas moving forward, it's proposed that income-based, if we kept with the income-based model, we would focus on the scale ranging from $27 to $62, as I stated previously, and with the drop-in rate ranging from 15 to 25. Also, as part of the proposal for this particular option, takes a look at set fees like other agencies that are in town. What might that set fee look like? It would look like $45 per week with a drop-in rate of 10, which would put us equivalent to what Muskogee County School District is offering in their set fee for their current after-school program with the 6 schools that they're currently in. Again, it's $45 for the Muskogee County School District, and their drop-in rate is also $10. We provide you some nonprofit and for-profit agencies like the YMCA, Child Care Network, St. Luke, Growing Room, and Angel Academy. They all have set fee rates, and as you can see here, their range in what they charge per week varies depending on the agency that we're looking at, anywhere from $75 with the YMCA all the way down to Angel Academy, $115 per week, and then drop-in rates vary as well. Okay.
So,
We have Counselor Woodson with a question.
Dr. Worsley, if we were to transition these schools that are left, what is it, 26 schools?
21 elementary and 5 middle schools.
Right, so 26 schools. We have no guarantee right now, or do we, that the school system will implement an after-school program in these?
We have no guarantee. In previous conversations with the school district, they are looking to, at one point, transition additional programs into the school. That was the conversation that I previously had with the superintendent. I don't know exactly how soon at this point, they're going to make that happen.
And here's my concern, and I know Councilor Huff had the same concern last time we discussed this, that if we just go ahead and transfer these 26 schools over there, and let's say they didn't budget for it, they don't have it, that means these children will not have anywhere to go or anything. If I had to pick from the two evils, if I may, I would increase the rate. And as the schools get transferred over, then it alleviates, because you're asking to increase $6 to possibility no program at all. And I don't think it's fair to, and if you look at the schools they choose, they're kind of elite schools. So if you just transfer these over, you're going to have children that really need some kind of guidance or assistance with their homework out on the street. And that's why I wanted to confirm it. So I can tell you, I can speak for me only personally. I can tell you that I would choose of the both evils, I would go the increase of $6. And as schools transfer over, then that's less on our budget and less that we have to worry about. But I don't want to leave any children that might be the only hug, food, education that they might have. Because like I always say, you don't know what people are going through unless you wear their shoes. You might make an assumption and a presumption, but that means nothing. So I could tell you right now, I would go more for increasing it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We have Counselor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. Dr. Worsley, clarify for me, you're proposing to go to 45 which would be the same cost as the school system?
Yes, sir. In the set fee? In the set fee, we're proposing the 45, and the set fee
That's
45.
at least an option. It's
As an
either
option.
the adjustment on the sliding scale or a flat fee.
Right, this one.
I-
Is that option or
But
this
with the flat fee,
Yeah, they still got it right here.
we.
So you're
obviously-
asking us to
Well,
give you
we're saying we need to
direction on-
break even, and we can break even either way. And I don't know if you all have a preference, but certainly we can select the way that we do it, whether it's a flat or a sliding scale. But we need to break even if we're going to keep it
Right.
in-house.
So the 45 for Muskogee, for the school system is a break even. They're
Well,
breaking even at 45.
I don't know, I have not gotten their numbers as to whether they're breaking even, but when they took over the 6 programs, they chose the schools and they said,
Yeah.
we're going to do it. We were on a sliding scale at all those 6 schools. They came in, and when they did it, they went to a flat fee of 45. Every person, regardless of your income, it's $45. That's what they did. And when
Okay.
we do the calculation, $45 times the number of kids that we have on an annual basis would put us there, considering we know that we would lose some kids because we no longer have a sliding scale.
Is your plan for council to give you direction on one of these two options?
If you have a preference.
And
Oh,
then-
well, no,
Well,
well,
let me finish.
I'm sorry.
And then you're going to pursue the changeover that you mentioned, the phase out of the city doing the after-school program and the school system picking it up.
yes, if the school district, if you choose to get out of the business, then I told the superintendent that we would go through the end of this school year, through the summer, while they're going through their budget process. They need to decide how they're going to handle it and hire part-time people so that when they start school in the fall, they are up and ready to go. If you decide we're going to get out of the business, if you decide we're going to stay in the business for whatever reason, like what Councilor Woodson talked about, then we need the sliding scale, we need to increase in the sliding scale or the $45 flat rate.
Well, I understand Councilor Woodson's concerns, but even with an increase, you're going to lose some families that just can't afford it.
And we project, as you see at the bottom, we project as much as 25% if we go to the flat rate of $45.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
If you have to choose between McDonald's and Nike shoes.
Let's see here, we have Counselor Thomas.
Mr. City Manager or Dr. Worsley, do you know when the school district transitioned these after-school programs in 2011, what their drop-off was?
I
know
don't
what the
know.
drop-off was. I don't know what the drop-off was, no.
Well, and you know, and we can ask them, but, you know, I don't know why they selected certain schools. Okay, and so if we had selected those same schools and that's all we had, we would not anticipate a 25% drop-off.
Say that again?
If we could pick and choose the schools that we're going to do after-school programs in, we would carefully pick schools that would be able to better afford, that makes sure that we don't have a loss. I mean, that's just what business economics. I'm trying to be tactful
Well,
and.
just say, they selected the schools that were most likely to be able to absorb the cost impact. And the ones where there might be an issue with economics, they
That's
left with the city.
At least that's the appearance.
Yeah.
And as I understood what you said, Mr. City Manager, this transition would be in the next budget, the next school year, if you will. We would continue through the end of this budget year.
The school term and the
And
summer.
then completely hand it off to the district July 1.
No, we will continue through this fiscal year, June 30th. We'd go through the entire summer. When they start their new school year in August or whenever, then that's when they take over. that's when we would no longer be in the
Well,
business.
we don't run this program in June and
We-
July, do we?
We have a summer program.
Is that this program?
Yeah, yes, we have, it is this program, our community schools, but it's opened up to the public as well, but majority of our summer camp programs come from the community school areas.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We have Counselor Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor. There has been a lot of discussion about this and a lot of passion about a lot of these different ideas. And so I understand how sometimes it gets a little sideways and maybe the communication is not quite connecting. And I think that's because there's been so many ideas and good ones but I agree with the city manager. I appreciate you bringing a recommendation. I've got some very real concerns. Any increase to somebody whose family income is $20,000 and now they're going to be paying $100 if they got 3 kids to keep them in a program. Until we understand and really can kind of quantify what the impact and what that fallout's going to be and what's going to happen, because most of the schools that we're left with are in lower socioeconomic areas, so they can probably afford this least of anybody. And even talking about the third of the penny from the River Center and CCVB, both of these organizations, it's only $200,000, but in an already skimpy budget for these organizations, it can have a devastating impact on what they're able to do from a programming standpoint, and that impacts the community because they are economic drivers. My vote is going to be to what we got, we got. If it's $835,000, that's fine. I have no problem examining an authority and just going ahead and testing that water and seeing if they can hire somebody and miraculously perform the same level of service providing at the $835 than others did at the 1.2 million. But I think that once this thing gets going and it coalesces around a volunteer group, whether it's an advisory board or an authority, they'll find ways to try to leverage the volunteers to try to create a greater number of hours for these folks to do their practicing. I think whatever we've got that we can budget for the aquatics division is what we've got, and we get as many hours out of it as we can, and we continue to look for opportunities to expand it as we go. We still have some time left before we pass the budget. I think that there's some things that may save. I mean, I know that there's been some talk around the Golf Authority. I think that you could get about $100,000 from that group if things fall into place the way they're progressing now. How many people are using Golden Park? At some point, the lack of maintenance on Golden Park is going to put it in a situation where nobody can use it anyway. So that's another $80-something. So that's nearly half the way there to the deficit. Plus, I think that much has been made about the revenue projections. Y'all are doing about $200,000 with, as you said, little to no maintenance, just opening the doors and kind of build it and they will come. I don't think $500,000 is beyond the realm of possibility for somebody who is focused on the marketing and who has done this in other markets and knows how to make that stuff work. I would prefer to use a little lower number so that we're being a little conservative. But I appreciate this, but I'm going to vote no for both of these. My vote as it stands right this moment would be to just allocate what we currently have budgeted through this year for next year too. And then we'll do whatever we can with it and allow the stakeholders to try to leverage their volunteer hours into expanding the hours. Thank you.
Okay, the Mayor Pro Tem had a question related to Councilor Henderson's statement of his position, which is that, no, it would be roughly $850,000, which is currently budgeted, and that would go through effective July 1, 2017 for next year's budget, which we do have time to talk about. The thing we don't have a lot of time for is the hiring of the third party and what we're going to contract with them for. We need to tell them what the contract's for. And so that's sort of the decision that needs to be made now. If it's to not enhance the budget, then it's a 45 hours additional revenue yet to be named later that might come up to enhance programs and so forth. So, but anyway, that's where we are. Okay, Mayor Pro Tem.
I guess we need to go back to the committee that was set up. And if we're gonna come up with 800 and something thousand in the budget, then they need to come up with some amount.
The what now? Who?
The commission that we talked about setting up for the aquatic center.
We have that.
If we have in the budget 800 and something thousand, then they need to let us know how much they feel they can come up with.
I think they made a presentation. It's going to be a while. It probably won't
Yeah,
be
it
for
won't.
2017, but they're going to, as I recall, said about the process of a nonprofit organization, fundraising, and that type of thing. So it will be, yeah, it'll be a while before that comes in.
Yeah,
But
I think.
they could do
But
volunteers.
they have to start someplace
Sure.
and sometime.
Sure.
And they don't need to wait till next budget year to start.
You know, I think they're working on it now. Okay. All right. Anything else? Okay.
Well, if.
Do you want a motion on your recommendations, or?
Well, I think we need a motion
Okay.
so that we know where we are, and if not this, then do you want to go back through the list, or do you want to vote for the 825,000? And that's going to be what we are going to work with vendor A on starting July 1st.
Okay, we have Counselor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. In talking with some of the swim community members, I may need Pam's help on this. What they've offered is maybe cutting it to 80 hours and taking the pro shop and concessions out of this budget and allow them to operate it, similar to what we do in the parks where the Little Leagues run the concessions there. They stock and they sell, those type things. And I think if we go the route of the authority, and they're able to have oversight over the operation, and they're able to receive funds through another outside 501c3, they may be able to hire a marketing person. And then that would take that formula out of, that cost out of this budget. So there's some things that could work moving in that direction. Anyway, I'd like to, if you could, can you help me with the numbers on that?
Can I ask you something?
Sure.
While she's doing those numbers, if we're going to a private entity to run it, right? Are they going to agree with us eliminating things? If they're running it, wouldn't they want to run the whole show? I'm just asking because I'm naive in it. I would think that if I'm the third party and I'm going to, run this show, I wouldn't want someone telling me, I'm not going to give you the pro shop, we're going to do this. I think if we're going with it, and I don't know, again.
It's
I
new,
would
it's
think-
new to me too, and
Yeah.
I don't know this area. I'm just,
Well-
it's a work in progress is what I
Yeah, I
understand.
agree.
We're-
It
We're
would be-
talking through some of these things.
It would be a work in progress,
And
and the authority and their governing board would ultimately decide, and they could, once they do their status and they're able to get funding, as Councilor Allen said, they could hire a marketing coordinator and all these things, and they could.
But that would be okay with
We-
the vendor that would take over?
Well,
That's my
we
that's my
negotiate
question.
with the
Yeah.
vendor, right? We
negotiate
negotiate
with the
items
vendor.
in the contract.
Okay, so you would negotiate that so the price
They
could
would
come
then be
down.
negotiating with the vendor. It's no different than the trade center negotiating with its food and
Okay, I
beverage
gotcha.
and with,
I got you.
We just need to know what ballpark we're in. But once we know if we're talking to them about 800 or 1.2, then we can negotiate all kinds of things, but we can't negotiate a $1.2 million contract with $800,000, obviously. That's not a good faith negotiation. So that's given rise to all this. Okay, Counselor Barnes, I think you were
No, I
next.
had mine.
Oh,
Mine.
well, it's Counselor Barnes and then
Okay.
Counselor Davis and then you. Counselor Barnes?
You need a motion on the city manager's,
Yeah.
proposal? That's my motion.
Okay, to approve the recommendations?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, to get on the table. And then is there a second related to that? Okay. It fails for lack of a second, so we'll continue on with discussion. We have Counselor Davis, and then we have Counselor Whitson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm looking at Dr. Worsley, Deputy City Manager Hodge. I'm looking at the community schools information that comes off the, I guess, out of the budget for the last 15 posted budget numbers that have been posted for the last 15 years. And I'm actually looking at the community schools information, and that's what we're talking about here, the after-school programs, right? Is that the same?
That's correct. Community
So
schools.
Okay, so that's what we're talking about. You know, there was a time